Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am going to give it just another minute or so to wait for one or two of the other attendees to join us, and then we're going to kick off this afternoon's webinar. Okay, I have it as 3 minutes past 4, so I think it's time for us to get started. So welcome to this afternoon's webinar. Today we're going to talk all about administrating a BIM 360 docs project. I wanted to just kick us off by giving you an idea of who I am. My name is Jani Viljoen. I'm hosting the webinar for you today. I am the Director of Professional Services at the Baker Baines team. I've worked on various other different BIM 360 implementation projects, both within individual organizations and for project-specific implementations where we've worked with the rest of the project team members. I used to be a Revit architecture training, so I do come from more of a Revit architecture and interior background, but I do also have a good understanding of the software. I did my interior design diploma at UJ, and I'm currently doing a short course at GIBS in digital transformation strategy, which I'm really excited about, and hopefully you'll be seeing more of that coming through in upcoming webinars. In our Baker Baines office, I'm known as the BIM Queen. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but I wear it with pride now. And then, since you're not seeing my face today and this is not a live presentation, I thought I'd just show you a picture and also tell you that I do present with my hands, so you can imagine that face with a lot of hand gestures going on behind the screen during this webinar. If we have a look at the agenda, we're just going to touch briefly on a Baker Baines introduction. There's also 2 different polls in this webinar, so I'd like for you to also just interact with us during the course of the webinar. Then we're going to start by having a look at just how to set up your project. managing the permissions. The permissions is one of the main things that drive people to look at BIM 360 Design, Docs Build, any of the other modules as an option for a common data environment. How to do design reviews, some best practices and workflows that makes that a little bit easier. The approval workflows within BIM 360 Docs, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end, which will also allow us to do a bit of a question and answer session. So I want to kick us off with a poll, so you just need to give me 1 second so I can go and launch this poll for you guys. There you go. So the first question is just for me to get an idea of how familiar you are with Baker Baines and the types of services we offer for our clients and how we try and help solve their problems. If the attendees can go and give us some feedback there, please. Great, I see a couple of responses coming through. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. That was very quick responses from everyone. I see pretty much everyone has voted. I'm assuming those who have not voted, I think, are 1 or 2 people from our internal team. Great, so most of you had actually indicated that you are either very familiar or somewhat familiar with who we are and what we do. That's good for me to know, because then I don't need to go and spend a lot of time on introducing us. I can rather get to the meat of this presentation. But just quickly, from a Baker Baines point of view, there's 4 main areas that we believe we play in. We are really at our core business process improvement consulting. My team specifically, from the professional services team, this is the area where we focus on a lot, and this is where we are trying to solve our different customer problems through digital transformation to ultimately help them make and design a better world. Then a very exciting newer area for us is the survey and design hardware. This is where we have partnered with Topcon and Leica to really bring you a scan to BIM solution. So if any of you haven't seen the Leica BLK 360, it's really a very cool gadget that you can do quick scanning and help you get some more accurate as-builts. Design software consultancy, that's the part that I think a lot of people are very familiar with. We are the 2nd largest Autodesk Gold partner in South Africa, and we also do support a couple of other software providers like IDAS and ClearEdge. And we definitely believe in blended learning, which I think has helped us through 2020 because we could provide different means and methods of presentation. Great, these are the different areas that we play in, and when we have a look at BIM 360 and administering projects, it really falls into all of these spaces. We do have a unique consulting methodology called iAdopt. Our iAdopt methodology is really there to help organizations build digital strategies and adopt their software. It goes far beyond just the CAD environment. It focuses on solving a problem, and ultimately we're trying to drive change and really return on investment for our clients. There is a whole framework and a lot more detail behind this. Then what I wanted to just start off by is having a look at BIM 360 Docs, which is the area that I'm going to focus on today in terms of administrating projects. BIM 360 Docs, for those of you who are familiar with the BIM 360 offering, BIM 360 Docs really is that's that bottom part. BIM 360 Docs is the foundation that the other BIM 360 modules are built on top of. So if you are using Design, Coordinate, or Build, the administration part of the project will be very much docs-based. There are 1 or 2 other elements in the other modules that we won't have time to cover today, but mostly we're looking at everything that's in your BIM 360 Docs. So you've got your document control, versioning, 2D, 3D viewing, approval workflows, mobile access. There's a lot of reporting and analysis behind that as well. So this is the area that we are focusing on from an administration point of view for today's webinar. Then I thought it would be important to just set the scene and put BIM 360 docs in context. BIM 360 docs really is a common data environment. And I wanted to go into a little bit more detail around a common data environment, specifically according to the BS and ISO 19650 standards. The link that you see on the bottom here, I'm not sure, you probably won't be able to go and click on that, but I will put it in the chat box at the end of the project. If you aren't familiar with ISO 19650, the UK BIM framework has a very kind of short summarized version of what this standard is all about. But just to delve into a little bit more detail, if we look at ISO 19650 Part 2, there's 5 parts, out of which 2 are still in development. Part 2 really talks about the delivery phase of the asset. And in Part 2, it makes very clear mention to establish the project's common data environment. Then it also lists a couple of requirements or things that common data environment will be able to do. So there's a lot of talk in ISO 19650 common data environment around having different information containers, and these information containers would need a specific ID and a couple of other information. You should be able to have fields and assigned values and documentation codification standards. The information container needs to have different types of attributes like status or suitability, revision, classification. It also needs to have the information, the ability for information to transition and move between these different containers or these different information states. We need to be able to record or basically have an audit trail to see the name of the user, the date of the user, and then the information in the revision that is carried within that information passing through the different containers that it talks about. These containers need to have really tight access and permission control on a container specific level. And then it also states that the appointing party shall establish the project's common data environment to serve the overall requirements of the project and support the collaborative production information. Now, I'm not the expert on ISO 19650. It's best to have a look at the source and go and read up what the authors of this standard is suggesting on how to implement this, although we have used this as a guideline for a lot of the work that we've done. And this, going through this in detail, will probably take, far more than just one webinar, but I thought it would just be good to put into context where BIM 360 and a common data environment fits in. If we talk about these information containers, that's one of the requirements for the common data environment according to ISO 19650. There's 4 or technically 3 different container states. Firstly, there's a work in progress. The work in progress is the information being developed by the originator, and it's not visible to or accessible to anyone else other than the creator or creators of that work in progress information. That then goes through a check, review, approve process and moves into the shared information container. Shared information container will be visible to the other appropriate task teams and also in some cases the appointing party. A lot of the times the appointing party here, we are referring to the client. Then again, a review process to a published container or a published state where information authorized for the use of detailed design, construction, or asset management. And then there also needs to be an archive. Basically, the archive needs to track everything that was done, how information moved through these different containers, and have that audit trail. Now, these things that I've mentioned to you for a common data environment and the requirements for a common data environment can all those boxes can be ticked by BIM 360 docs. Great, so let's jump straight into it. Account admin, there's 2 different admin levels, and I'm going to start at the highest admin level and then drill it down for you guys. From an account admin point of view, if we look at the administration permissions, an account administrator can pretty much do everything. It's important to remember that you can only be, if you are an account manager on your hub, You can be a project administrator on someone else's hub. So you could be account and project admin on your own organization's BIM 360 hub, and a project administrator for a project that's running on either another consultant or a client's hub. Mainly the things that the account admin would do that the project admin would not have accessibility to is obviously your account setup, creating and deleting projects is a big one, managing the account member directory and the companies. That's probably one of the things that we find takes up most of the time for the account administrator. These are the tasks that if you find yourself being an account admin on a BIM 360 hub, these are some of the things that you will need to do. You'll create and manage those projects. The project admin can also play a part in managing the projects. You will be responsible for adding members to the directory. It's important to add here that you can have more than one account admin. So ideally, this should be managed by 2 or more people. You need to add companies to the directory, create roles, and manage the associated services assigned to those roles. The members and the services assigned to the members or what BIM 360 modules they have access to. Now let's have a look at this in a live environment. So we're in BIM 360 docs. You can see there at the top Baker Baines, that's my current hub. I can go and change hubs if I'm part of another one, and it will also list all of my projects. If I'm going to click on that little question mark, I do want to show you submit your ideas. BIM 360 is not like, let's just go and know things here, is not like some of the other software where there's less frequent updates. Here, there's a lot of updates. If you have an idea, go submit it, guys. We can see here top voted, Lorca, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. He got 441 votes because he had suggested that BIM 360 documents should be shared with non-project members. And if you have been using BIM 360 docs for a while, you'll know that that has actually been implemented. So it's good to also go and submit your ideas. Then under our project page in account admin, you can see your projects, the members, the companies, and when someone had last signed into that project. To go and create a new project, you know that the only 2 necessarily fields are your name and project type, but it is good practice to go and add other information. Go and set up your business units. If you are working for a large organization that has a structural and a civil business unit or department, go and add that. Then the next page to the top, our member directory. Here you can see all of your members. You can sort this in different ways. You can also see their company and when last they signed in, as well as their status. If someone is pending, it means that you have sent them an invite and they haven't actually selected their invite yet. Only the account admin can add new people to the member directory. So it's important to know from an administration point of view how to go and do this. You can go and disable members, resend invites if they say they didn't get it. Disable member is probably a better option than deleting a member, because if you are deleting a member and in 6 months' time there's a new project, you need to go and add them again. Under companies, here we can see all the different trades that our companies fall under, and similar to creating a project, we can go and create a new company. Again, good practice to actually add information into that company. So add a telephone number, add an address, so that if you're working on the project and you need to phone so-and-so from the engineers, you can just quickly go and find the telephone number here. Next part, if you look at the top ribbon there that I want to have a look at, is the roles. So roles, I think, are underutilized in some of the implementations that I've seen done, and actually carries a whole lot of value. There's a default list of roles that you will see in front of you here that is preloaded into BIM 360. On our hub, we do have a lot of different services. So here, for example, I said, I want to go and delete a safety manager. We really don't use safety managers, or perhaps we call them something else. To go and add a new role, so I see there's only an architectural role, but I know there's subsegments to that. I'm going to, for example, go and say I'm going to create an architectural technician, because they might have different different permissions and different things set up to them. So they won't by default be a project admin, where BIM manager will by default be a project admin. If you're wondering, I'm just adding, perhaps there's the partner from the architectural firm running the project that we also want to go and add here. Type that in and add that, and you can go and select the services you want assigned to them. So if you are using BIM 360 Design and Docs, your partner might not have access to Design because they're not actively using Revit, whereas your technician will. Next is your analytics. So the analytics will start, and now I'm sharing our information. The analytics will show you when your contracts are due, what types of projects you have. You can go and add additional metrics to it, and also pay attention to your services. If you are adding far more people than what's allowed within your license pool, you will see that. Here's our different account admins. You can allow other parties to go and add account admins, and we've done and set up business units, and you can see again, you can see all the activities. So even if I were to be kicked off, you can still see everything that I did as account admin. Important to also know where you can view your account ID. From an Autodesk licensing point of view, if you were to want to add additional subscriptions to your hub, you need to know that account hub ID, because the additional, if you are docs only and now you want to move to BIM 360 Design also, this is where that account ID becomes very important. So that's where you can go and find it. So pretty straightforward from an account admin point of view. You'll see as we go through the presentation how those roles become more and more important. And also how assigning, if you create a new project member, to make sure you actually assign them to the company they belong to, as well as the role that they are fulfilling. Then from a project admin point of view, let's just jump into project admin and run through this quickly. Project admin will also see members, but in this case, we're only seeing the members that's on our project. Here we can see I'm in the module selector under project admin. And these are all the people that have been added to my sample project. You can see here I have added roles to them, and you can add more than one role to a person. So a person can have both the role of BIM manager and the role of architect. I want to go and add new people to my project. Now, these people that I'm searching for here, let's see, Etienne, there you go. You can add multiple people at one. I'm also going to add Richard in here, select those two. Now, they were created on account level, so I can see Bob the Builder is the company that he works for, pulls through as architect. That's probably not right if he works for Bob the Builder. I'm assuming that would rather be a contractor. And I'm assigning him the role as team and perhaps document manager. And I can go and add these two people. So I've added Richard, he's the complicated client, and Etienne, Bob the Builder, to our project in here. I can go and remove members from the project if I wanted to by just selecting the box and go and removing them. Then here, these will show the companies as well as the members within those, so it's an easy way to check and make sure that you have everyone on the project. If I jump into services, so a lot of the work that we're going to do is under this services. From the overview point of view, you'll see there's all the different modules. Now, we have access to multiple different modules. If you only have document management, only document management will pop up here. You can also go to the profile of your project, and this is where you can go and put your project information. And a lot of people don't put images. Put an image in, because if you are working with 17 or 107 different projects, it's nice to identify them by the name. You can also go and archive a project. So that is where that archived container or state in ISO 19650 plays a part. Now, if we have a look under our notifications, there's an email notification option which specifically applies actually to issues. You can go and say, do I want my project team to instantly receive issues hourly or daily? And you can also allow them to go and change this themselves. Next, from an admin point of view, is locations. If you're clicking on the locations and it does take a while to load, don't be like me for the first time and think it doesn't work. It just needs some time to load. Here you can download a template, and this is where the structure of your project in terms of your locations, your levels, all of that can be set up because it makes it so much easier to assign something to a specific location. There is a template that you can go and download if you want to import this all in one to give you an idea of how to set up the template, specifically if you're working with large multi-story projects. You don't necessarily want to do it the manual way. But you can do it the manual way, and here we're just going to add under this project, there's a ground floor. Or perhaps if you're working with a project that has multiple different buildings and different units, you can set up those locations in this manner. This is not a requirement, but it is good practice to actually go and set up those locations, and it's a once-off. Then if we go to our document management area here, so if you have both document management and some of the other modules, there will be a longer list down here, but now we're only looking at document management. Under activity, this is a new project, so there's no activities listed yet. Our advanced settings, so that first one, share documents publicly. Remember when I showed you how you can submit your idea, and one guy submitted his idea and got a whole bunch of votes for it? That's that feature. You can go and turn it on and off. This is where this will allow people to email a document from BIM 360. They need to have the permission, but what it does do is it takes away the, someone shares something on BIM 360, you need to go and download, save it somewhere, rename it, attach it to an email and send it, because that's not really in line with some of the best practices for a common data environment. So it's nice if someone's not on the project, but it's a once-off where you need to send them an email to do it there. Then we've got our reviews where you can go and create an approval workflow. This is coming up towards some of the later areas. And you can also go and cloud upgrade Revit models. If you do have Revit models saved on the cloud, this is more, I guess, for some of the BIM 360 design users, that it can go and upgrade your model so that you don't have to download a model, save it somewhere, and then update it to perhaps a 2020 or a 2021 version of Revit, which you might be using. So those are some of the main, that's basically a main overview of your project admin dashboard. From a project administration point of view, there's a couple of things that we always suggest you agree to before you start. First of all, the folder structure for both your plans and your project files area. If you have used BIM 360 before, you'll know that plans and project files comes default in BIM 360, and these two files cannot be deleted. However, they can be renamed. So if we have a look at some key considerations for your project admin to take into account when you are setting these projects up, is plans and project files can be confusing for some project members. That's why in some cases it helps to go and rename them. And not all users can add subfolders. So for example, if a user has view-only access, they won't be able to add a subfolder. So make sure that your skeleton folder structure is well set up so that you don't have a whole bunch of people with view-only access who needs to go and add subfolders. Also, subfolders automatically inherit the permission level of the parent folder, but it can be changed later. So sometimes it's easier to just assign permissions to the main folder and have it filter down through all of the subfolders. I will show you how managing that process becomes a lot easier when you're using your roles. From a recommendation point of view, like I've mentioned, consider renaming plans and project files so that the names are not as confusing. So project files are really everything that is not a plan or a drawing, and typically your plans and your drawings are usually shared in a shared or a published state, not always in a work in progress state. And it's also useful to create a permission tree based on kind of what is expected from everyone on the project before you start. So if you have your list of your project members that you need to go and add, you can also have an idea of, what is this person's role? So it becomes easier for you to firstly assign roles and assign associated permissions to those roles. What I've just mentioned to you, if you have that agreed before you start, that means that you will have less tasks of changing things as the project go on. So next step is set up your desired folder structure like I've mentioned. and use this folder structure in a template project. I will show you this shortly, because that way you set it up once. Next time when you start a new project, you can just apply that. What you see there to your right is just an example. In this case, they have changed the name, plans, and project files to model-based information and documentation. And for this project, it made it easier for people to understand what is the one and what is the other one. Permission to these folders. So project admins do have full access permission. Permissions can be assigned by role, by company, or by user. And you can create subfolders specific to what some of these members have in terms of permissions. Your project team member needs the roles. I'm going to talk a lot about that today. This is just a quick overview. I'm not going to talk through this all in detail. It is available on the Autodesk Knowledge Network, but it just gives you an idea of your folder permissions that we're going to go through. So view only basically is what it says. View and download, also again pretty straightforward. You can see here that they can't go and mess around with title blocks or values, attributes, or permission settings. View, upload, and download, very similar to view and download, but just now you can also add information. View, upload, download, and edit is where someone can subscribe to the folders, delete subfolders, rename folders. So be cautious with this, because the folder structure, if you have too many people renaming and deleting subfolders, it's going to make folder management quite difficult. And then a folder controller can pretty much do almost everything. There's only a couple of things from a folder and permission point of view that a folder controller can't do if you compare it to a project admin. So be cautious of who you give full folder control to in this case. So let's have a look at our folders and the permissions and settings behind this. Here you can see, if we talk about those containers, in plans I've created a shared and published. Project files, there's also a client folder, and you can see here there's a work in progress, shared and published. So firstly, I'm going to go to permissions. Your permissions will show to the side. And these people, Corinne, Mitchell, Yanni, and Etienne, are all project admins. So they will also automatically have folder control. You'll see that's inherited, so they can't go and change that. I'm going to add someone new to this. So in here, if you type it in, it'll search by name or username, or if you were to go, let's use a role, for example, I want to go and add my BIM manager here, or my mechanical BIM modeler. Or you can also search by company if you wanted to. So if you are giving permissions to the plan folders, it can be individual person, by role, or by company. It also picks up if the company email address contains a Baker Baines, it will also pick that up. And assign a permission level based on that. Then we're going into the subfolders. So here's the shared folder. Now that shared folder is, if we look back at our ISO information containers, that shared folder is that shared state. But I've created a role team. I find that creating this role is quite useful, because if you want to quickly assign across the board permission for view and download, that is useful. So everyone in the design team, different consultants, will have view and download permission to what is happening in plans here. This way also, if the people change, you don't need to keep up with the names, you can just keep up with whoever's in that role. There's an architecture subfolder under shared where I want to go and add my architectural team so that they can have access to that sub architecture folder under shared. So here I'm using the role of architect. So if you have the role of architect, I'm going to go and set up permission of view, upload, and download. So you don't necessarily want, or actually let's do view, upload, download, and edit, because that, it is the architect and I'm giving them access to their own folder. Then as an example for the permission here, I would go, okay, I also want to go and add the architect technician, but their permission is going to be slightly different. Perhaps I don't want them to also be able to edit the folder. I should only give them view, upload, download. So they can't rename and delete folders, move things around, but they can view, upload, download. If any new member is added and I give them permission or I give them a role of architect, they'll also automatically have access there. For published, you'll see here the team role has that permission because it came from the top folder. Then under project files here, I have a work in progress folder. Now in this case, I've set this up and named it the company names. Now, I would say because this is work in progress folder, a lot of people actually tend to still have their work in progress on their local machine. But this work in progress, I can just go and assign to the perfect project manager and perfect PM. And since it is their folder, I can give them folder control. It's their work in progress folder. They can go and do in that folder whatever they would like. No one else has access to that. This is where the permissions and the roles play a big part, because I find that it's much easier to manage it. There's also a client folder. For the client folder, I'm going to add the complicated client to their folder, but I'm also going to add the perfect project manager to their folder, as well as maybe the quality QS, because these individuals work together quite frequently, and it will allow all of them to add information to that client folder, but the rest of the consultants on this project won't actually be able to see what is going on in that client folder. And you'll see here the 3 companies have been added. So similar to the roles, anyone who is now part of the complicated client, the client name in this case, will have access to that. And then I can go from a role point of view. If you're a project manager, you get to also have folder control over this, or maybe just edit control so that you can go and create subfolders. You don't necessarily want the client to go and create a whole bunch of subfolders. Now roles are starting to make more sense for those who weren't familiar with that before. Then if we want to just quickly have a look at creating a new project, it's add a project, create your project, add the same information. This is a pretty straightforward process, and that would have been saved. But what I want to show you, if we just give this a second to load in here, if I now on this new project that I created, go and activate this, I will have an option to go and apply a project template. And that same sample project that I've just shown you with those information containers and role permissions set up for that will automatically be created in my new project. So in my new project, as soon as I give anyone the role of architect, they automatically have access to the folders. Or if I give anyone the role of client, they would automatically have access to that client folder. So from a project admin point of view, I always find that it's a lot of work the first time, and the second and the third and the fourth time, the work becomes less and less because you would have had your template and your roles and your permissions set up. So just from a folder structure point of view, there's some properties that we need to have a look at. So the standard properties or attributes to your folders and your files will be document name, file name, version, updated by, updated date, number, and title. Now, there are a couple of additional properties that you might want to consider adding, specifically, again, if you are working in line with your ISO standards and you're using the BS 1192 naming convention, there's these additional attributes or pieces of information that you might want to go and add. So your project, your originator, your volume or your system, your location level, type, role, number. These gray blocks are metadata, status, revision, and classification. So I'm going to show you just what I mean exactly by these additional properties or attributes in BIM 360. So in BIM 360, if we go to our document management page, you'll see there's a little gear at the top there, and this basically gives us all the information that's in these columns. So title, markup, issue, RFI, you can go and turn off RFI, location, or file name. You'll see some of them are locked, and in here I created originator, role, zone, and type. So I can go and add in a new attribute, decide what I want that new attribute to be. So maybe this new attribute is the project number. and that is a text field. It can be a date dropper, a text field, or a drop down. In the case of the text field, you'll see now if I go into my files, let's have a look at some DWGs here, and we scroll towards the end of these attributes or properties, you'll see there's a revision in here and also a project number. So I can go and type in a project number. Maybe not the best example for a project number, because you really shouldn't have multiple different project numbers in one project, but originator zone type, those types of things, definitely. Under project files, you'll see the same thing, project numbers in there. I'm going to go to my gear again and add an attribute in here. Now, if you are under the plans environment, because the plans environment does title block extraction, you can link some of those attributes to areas in the title block that you can't do in project files. So in project files, specifically if you're using that naming convention, I'd suggest using a drop-down menu. So if we're looking at type, there's a set of or acronyms or codes for the different types. And instead of going to do a text field, create a drop-down menu. So DR would be drawing, M2, M3 is a 3D model, it's a visualization model, or it might be a bill of quantities, or it might be an animation file. These, if you're familiar with the naming standard, these codes will make sense to you, and you can go and put that in there. So now if we go to any of this information, you can go in the drop down right at the end, probably, yeah, there you go, right at the end, and choose the type code. So this DR, because it's a drawing. You can also go and reorganize these. You might not want shared or set. Here you might actually want your originator and your type to be listed right next to the project name, so that it's easier to see, that you don't have to go and scroll to the side to go and get that done. Great, so in the interest of time, I'm actually going to skip this poll or this question. This question would have been, who of you are managing project, but I do have all of your contact details, so I can always chat to you afterwards. But let's move on. So our design review, issues and markups. First of all, there's often a when do I use it? What is the one versus what is the other one? Markups in BIM 360 docs provide the ability to communicate via comments and annotations on drawings and models. Markups, we're all familiar with markups. Just back in the day, we used to do them on pen and paper. Issues are more formal, and it has an assignment date. So your markups do have both a private and a published state. So if you are just marking up a drawing internally, it can be in that private state, so you can go and publish it. It does carry over later on. For issues, again, here the role thing come into play again. You can assign an issue to a company, to a role, or to an individual. You can only assign it to one individual. So I usually suggest, assign it to a role. If you are assigning an issue, assign that issue to the architect or the architectural technologist, or whatever other role you've created. If you do want to, what I refer to as like CC someone into an issue, you can go and tag them in the comment section. For markups, just a little side note from a management point of view, it's good to maybe in your execution plan or in other project kickoffs, if you're running on BIM 360, to assign a color markup to each discipline. Just makes it easier, because if you are looking at a drawing and there's more than one markup, you know that the architects are using red, structures are using blue, MEP would be using green. So good tip if you aren't doing it already. Markups, the permissions for markups are very similar to what we used to, because if we look at those folder permissions, if you have certain permissions, you can create a markup or can't create a markup. Members must have edit permission in order to publish markups. So if I want to go and publish a markup, I should have edit permission into a folder. This is the collaborative permissions, which is very similar to the one that you've seen before. Again, this is readily available on the Autodesk website, and this gives you an idea of when we start talking about markups and issues, who can do what. You don't want just anyone to go and create an issue, and you definitely don't want just anyone responding to an issue. Further with the markups, you can see when and where a markup has been created on your project. So this is one of those attributes that I've mentioned in the lists before. Issues can be created next to markup, so it can be kind of like a combination of the two. Private markups can be deleted, published markups can be archived. So again, this goes back to that archived state or that archived container that the ISO 19650 Part 2 CDE refers to. You shouldn't just be able to wipe things away, and these published markups will be archived. Great, then we get to issue management. Issue management, a little bit more complicated than markups, but actually quite straightforward. Again, a couple of considerations. Consider that although this is self-steering in terms of, anyone could have access to issues, you don't necessarily want anyone and everyone to go and, just go wild with issues. It also originates from a model, so you can add that information into a model and pinpoint an issue to a specific place in a model. And then when an issue is opened, the user does have the ability to view it in both 2D or 3D. From a recommendation point of view, to get just some governance in terms of how these issues are managed, and this is also something at the start of the project to have a look at as an example. From company A to the project member of company B, the project manager can internally distribute. So if I am sitting in an office and I'm the architectural technician and the partner running the project is right next to me, that's not an issue. I can just, it's an internal thing, I can just ask them a question. But if I have an issue that I need to raise with the structural engineer or that I need to raise with the project manager, it becomes something more official. And then also really differentiate between the different types of issues. Is it coordination? Is it design? What type of issue it is, because it gives people more information to understand how to deal with that. And if from a project manager point of view, you're on the project, you get to do some analysis on the issues to really see what root causes are popping up and where are we having the most issues with issues. Issue permissions, like I've mentioned, admin can configure the permissions for the project. So again, here the admin needs to go and assign separate permissions for issue creation. Project admin can remove, restrict, or expand the permissions as necessary. So if you see you've granted someone access to go and create permissions and they are misusing that, that privilege of creating that, you can go and change this throughout the project. Again, here you'll see that we're doing it by roles. Roles are given default permissions. If this is set up right from the start, it becomes a lot easier to manage throughout the process. Status definitions, there's two different sets of issue statuses. The basic one will be the standard one that gets created. If you do want to use field issues, you can go and change it, but typically we find that these field issues are better used in the BIM 360 built environment because these refer to field work. I think it's good to just have a definition of these issues so that people aren't confused between what is answered or closed or void or what these issue definitions actually mean. Configuring issues, there's the use of issue templates, and this is something that I can't stress enough because it makes tedious tasks go a lot faster when you can set up a predefined template for issues and basically, I wouldn't say bulk create, but it auto-populates a couple of fields when you're creating your issues, because if we're creating, if I'm the architect and I'm creating coordination issues because I'm reviewing the structural model or whatever the case is, the way that I'm creating issues will be quite similar, and I'll show you that template shortly. Great, so let's jump in and have a look here. Again, project admin, I'm under services here, issues. Here I can see all of my roles. Again, I can go and remove roles. So safety manager, I'm in a different project, so that's why you're seeing safety manager pop up again. I want to go and remove the safety manager. And for the plumbing engineer, I want to say, actually, the plumbing engineer can, let's say he can view all. That's probably not the best example of permissions. If I go and add members here, again, you can see you can do by person, by role, or by organization. So I'm going to add, who are we going with? Okay, Daniel, he's part of the MEP Consulting Engineers, and I'm giving him personally access to view and create. Then let's have a look at the types. There's different types of issues. You can see here that I've made some inactive, and all of these have a lock next to that because it's part of what BIM 360 comes with. There are also root causes. Oh, someone created a root cause of stupidity. That is probably not the best idea. So let's go and delete that. That should not be a root cause for an issue. I can go and create a new category name. Maybe I'm saying the root cause of a specific issue might be it's really just a drafting issue. That's why it's not looking the way that it's meant to. You can go and create custom attributes, so additional information within your issues. Similar to what we've done before, you can go and put in a title. A title you need to have within your custom attributes. Under text field, you can go and add either a text or a drop down or numerical scale, and then add in a bit of a description. So drop down, paragraph, or numeric value. So let's go and add in a new attribute. Maybe we say we want to add a priority to it and keep it numeric. You can go and say it's priority 1 is 2, 3, so that people know, what's the impact of this issue, for example. So scale 1 is 2, 3. Maybe be a little bit more clear on this if you want to go and add something like priority as an additional attribute. You can also go and add new types of types, or go and add an attribute. So here under coordination, I'm adding my priority attribute that I've just created for me to get more information. It's active, I can see it's there. You can go and add more attributes than just priority if you had wanted to. When you're managing your issues, adding these attributes and adding the types and the root causes makes it easier for you to filter through issues, work through issues. These examples that I'm showing have small projects with few issues, but if you're working on really large projects and people are using issues in the way that they're meant to, you'll end up with a whole lot. And from a management point of view, it just makes it so much easier to break things down into smaller pieces. Let's have a look at another example in here. Go to our project admin, our module selected document management, and see if we can go and create some of these issues. The creation of issues are pretty easy. The management of issues, not so much. So here I'm in my shared folder. I'm going to models. Under models, I see I've got Navisworks and Revit. You can see one person, correct naming convention. Other person, not so much. But let's go and open this model in here. I can see both my 3D views as well as a couple of other views, which just makes it easier for me. I always wonder why the architects upload models with trees in. It makes it so much bigger, but anyway. Here's a little window. This is our small medical facility, and I want to go and create an issue. Now, this issue that I'm creating, you might decide that, you might argue with me and say that this issue should have been more than a markup, but let's go and create it. The current status is open. Let's go no window required. Well, actually, maybe let's just give the person a direct task. Remove this little window. I, again, can assign it to a user, a role, or a company. Assigning it to a role, like I mentioned, probably the way that I would go, because if you assign it to a person and that person's away, or that person changed, let's go and, in this case, assign it to the designer. There you go. I can choose a due date for them. Say they need to have this done next week, Friday. Because I set up my locations, I have that ground floor location. I can add in location details if I wanted to. I am the owner of this case, and here I can go and add in a root cause. So this root cause, I'm going to see if there's drafting, that option that I created in there under root cause, to go and assign that to that, or to say, it's design coordination, it's not a requirement. We can go and remove it. So here you can see two new ones that I've created, new attributes, cost impact and priority. So say, yes, there's a cost impact because maybe, from the project manager and the QS point of view, they can have a look at issues and go, everything that has a cost impact, yes, they need to pay attention to. Again, just makes it easier to manage your issues. Then lastly, from an issue point of view, I just want to show you how these templates work. So I'm in document management currently under my issue area, and under my issue area, you can see here's all the issues. Clearly, my team is a little bit behind on issues, and you can see these linked documents. I've given them a couple of titles, and I can also see the status. So there's one issue that's been answered, was assigned to Bob the Builder. There's a document that's linked to it. If you're using the mobile device, there's an option to also go and add photos in here. And here I've added additional information. So firstly, there's a Baker Baines, there's a cost impact, there's a priority that I can go and change in here. You see all the activities that's happened with that issue and all the details, and I can say, I'm happy with that. Let's go close that. And done. That status will now, I can PDF it if I wanted to, if I had to share this with someone else, or export this whole report to someone else. Again, this also has different attributes. So if you are actively managing issues, you might want to go and tick the boxes for the root cause, or who's the owner. Here's my custom attributes. I want to see, what's the cost impact, what's the priority. I also just created a Baker Baines attribute that we can go and add. So templates, it's next to issue. There you go, templates. Here there's one template, it's Baker Baines template. It's automatically assigned to Anin, who's part of the architectural team in this case. I'm going to create a new, I can stick to this template creation area, or I can go and create a new template. Let's say this new template is coordination. Maybe we should rather call it clash. So let's say it's a coordination first fix. So we're looking at some issues that we want to assign to people related to our coordination. Issue title, let's go ahead and call it clash as an example. So, and here we can say, okay, that's automatically an issue type is that. The status is automatically open, and it's automatically assigned to the BIM manager. Let's say it's automatically assigned to the BIM manager, and they need to respond in X number of days. So they need to respond in 5 number of days. The owner of this issue would be me. I'm not going to create the root cause in here because the root cause might be different. So now there's a new template created in here. And if I go back to my document management environment, under issues, let's jump in here. There you go. So in my document management environment, I have a project file open here. And here, for example, I see something is not 100% right there. I can go and just pinpoint my issue, but I can select from a template. So I'm going to go and select that modeling, that Baker Baines modeling issue. And all of these other things automatically populated for me. So I don't need to scroll down and fill in 7 different fields. I can just go, yep, it's a modeling issue, created, and off you go. So this is where the issue templates become very handy. It does make it a lot easier to assign these different types of issues. Then lastly, and I know I'm tight on time, lastly, document approval workflow. So an approval workflow, just an overview of that, can be used to distribute project drawings, models, documents for approval. There's different steps that you can choose within BIM 360, but basically there's someone who initiates it, someone who reviews it, and someone who approves it. This will help you make sure that the information gets into the right hands and that information has been validated or reviewed by someone. You can monitor these reviews You can submit documents for reviews, and you can go and create different workflows. A lot of these workflows, if you see in terms of creating it, there's a different step process. So there's a 5-step approval, a 6-step approval, there's a 3-step group approval. That can get very complicated. I wouldn't say go and create a 4-step group approval. That's probably a little bit of an overkill, although it's nice to see that it is there. But a lot of these approvals also tie into those information containers spoken about earlier. According to ISO 19650, the CDE needs to have a container, and from your work in progress to shared, it needs to go through an official review process. So here you can see this is under approval workflows in your project admin environment. You can go and set up a workflow. Firstly, you can set up an initiator. In other words, you can say only Yanni can start this, let's call it a shared to publish approval workflow, or an architect shared to publish approval workflow, or all the architects can do it, or only the BIM manager can do it. Create the person who needs to be the reviewer, and then the person who needs to approve it. Let me show you this in here. So here you go. If you have a look at the screen, you can see I'm going into my project admin environment, and under project admin, you should be able to go to reviews. There you go, and go and create an approval workflow. This approval workflow, I'm just going to create an easy one. There's no need for me to go into make this any more complicated than it needs to be. Just go and create 1-step approval workflow. I'm calling this approval workflow just shared to publish, so that, you know, if I have shared information that's now been reviewed, I can go and publish it, or basically issue it for construction if you wanted to. Again, user, roles, or companies. I'm going to use roles. You've heard me talk a lot about that today. Let's say the architectural technician can kick off this process. So anyone with that role, or maybe the BIM manager role, can kick off this process. The final approver for this, and we're giving them 3 days, so they need to kind of do this within 3 calendar days. Otherwise, it's going to flag them and just make it easier for them to give their deadline to know, please actually go and have a look at this. Again, user, role, or company. So in this case, let's say, for example, we're going to choose the architect. The architect needs to basically approve the manager's work. I want to say it like that. There's different labels that you can go and add for it. You know, is it approved, is it rejected? And there's an option to go, it is approved, but actually it's approved with comments, which is a good one if you want to go, yes, it's fine, but remember to do this one thing. Then action upon completion. Update documents with approval statuses when review is completed, and also copy documents to another folder. When we're talking about that shared to publish, here we can go, okay, once this approval workflow is done, please copy these files from the shared space into the published space. You can allow the initiator to change the icon location. So if you're just choosing the public folder and they need to go within that published folder, sorry, the published folder, within that published folder, go and pick which one they want to put it in. Here you can see the path. So this is a very easy way if you're using that workflow of work in progress, shared, and then also your published, to have documents move from one stage to the next. But costing reviews, coordination reviews, there's a hell of a lot of different types of approval workflows that you can go and create. So here I'm going into my shared environment for information. I'm ticking a couple of my ground floor plans here. You'll see there's options where you can add set assignments. I can delete because I've got permissions for it, share, email it, move it around or export it, create transmittals, and then submit for review. And here, there's my approval process that I've created. There's only one, so I can choose here. This gives me a note that I can go and change where I want that to be. That's the name for the review that I'm currently doing. I should probably give it actually a little bit more information. Ground floor, so shared to published for ground floor. and I can go and submit these. These are the reviewers. It'll go to Alyssa so that she can review it. I can also notify other project members in here if they want to have a look at it. So for example, I also want to make sure that one of my other team members or another role gets notified about that issue. I can tag them into this approval workflow. So my document manager, for example, need to be included in this workflow process so that they can review it and know what is going on. Great, type in a message if you wanted to and go and see. It's number 1, it's the first one. It does have automatic numbering system, and get that workflow set. Great, guys. So in conclusion, I know a lot of what I've shared, some of you might have been familiar with, others might not. If you're unfamiliar with the BIM 360 platform, please go and have a look at the security and the permission controls and the security white paper when we talk anything cloud hosted. This question is one of the questions that always come up. So for those of you still awake and still on the webinar, even though I have taken up more than my hour's worth of time, I want to just see if there are any burning questions. One of the questions that I always get is being a project admin really admin intensive and hard work? Some people love doing it because they have a lot of access and permissions, other people not. If you follow a lot of these best practices for setting up templates and permissions and roles, you can make it less admin intensive. Great, okay. Great, well guys, thank you very much for attending our webinar. If any other questions do come up, or if you wanted to know more about how to administer your BIM 360 project, there's our support information. Our support desk is up and running from 8 o'clock in the morning until 11:30 tonight. So you might not have a question now, but if a question pops up at 10 o'clock tonight, you're welcome to pop us an email and engage with us online. Everyone, thank you for attending. I hope you have a lovely weekend and we'll hopefully connect soon.